So first, I just want to say thanks to everyone. I love the wide range of participants we have today, and I feel like we can learn so much from each other. Inside of here, we've got someone from all different levels and areas of community and school board. So super. You can hear me? Good. Thank you. Okay, so I'm sure now we all know the value of building relationships. Blaine actually gave us a beautiful introduction before we even got here on why relationships are important to a project. Now, we have all kinds of different projects going on. We're working with a bunch, you're working with a bunch. Common ones are implementing gardens, implementing composting, waste management, all those other things. But regardless of what we're doing, we can't do them by ourselves. Now, I personally come from a place where it was all for one, right? I came in thinking that we made something go, and from then it went. If you build it, they will come, which can be true to a certain extent. But if you build it without building the relationships that go with it, they might come, but they won't stay, and everything will fall apart in the end. So we see this with different projects that happen in schools, where, say, a teacher is there for 1 year and implements a recycling program and coordinates it all. And without having the ties to anything outside or even inside the school beyond that one, when that teacher moves on, the project falls apart. I'm sure we've seen things like this, right? And the same with a garden. A garden gets implemented, it's there, and without any relationships in the school or beyond the school, there's nobody that takes care of it in the summer, or the crops fail because, again, they're not being watered or weeded, or it just ends up going fallow. And then we have these school yards with, just say, a box full of weeds in the long term, or an empty garden. This is something that we see a lot. So what I've come personally to learn, and we all, I'm sure many of you have always known this, is that we need to build these relationships inside the school and outside the school in order for things to succeed, in order for us to have longevity and success in the long term, so that people are using the space more than just one season, so that we're sharing our skills, sharing our knowledge. We get our projects put in like this. We can have buy-in from different parts of from the schools, from the community, all of that. Basically, I like to think about it as we're in a garden, we're gardening plants, right? We're gardening plants so that we can have this space that's growing. But beyond that, a garden isn't just here. We need to be gardening the people around it too, so that everybody can be contributing and that garden can thrive, so it can all work together. We're creating symbiosis beyond the garden, beyond the square and the dirt. So this brings in more people, more hands, and more buy-in, so we can continue longer in the future. And so to do this, in order to build the relationships, first we need to make the connections, and then we need to empower our community members. So our relationships, for a garden example, I can say that can be within the school. We can talk about, we've got the students. So we're building relationships with our students, first of all, inside the garden. We're building relationships with parents, teachers. We work with daycare educators and technicians, also administration. So there's a lot of levels right in there. And one of the great ways to do this is, as many of you mentioned, creating a committee of different levels. So it's important to have different people from different places in your committee, because one thing that's always true about a school is the people are transient, so to speak. Nobody's there forever, right? The parents will come through, and when their children leave, the parents are going to leave. Teachers will move around inside of there. Administrators will move around inside of there. So the more people we can have from more levels and more places, the better chance we have at success in the long term inside of there. So we build our committee, and then we also need to empower people with that. So we want people to be confident and comfortable, to feel capable, because we want them to have some kind of stewardship, some kind of attachment and engagement with the garden. We want it to be used as widely as possible across the school and into the community, right? So with this, we specifically, we will provide education. So we'll do different experiential learning activities with the kids. We also provide education to our educators and teachers on how to work in green spaces and what they can use the garden for, how they can tie it into their other programming, or we create programming for them sometimes. Also support in there. So beyond your committee, when it's everyone who's engaging with the garden, how can we support each other? What can we do for you? What can we supply you with? How can we help you? Who can we connect you with? So bringing in all those pieces for support and the connections inside of there. Also within the community or whoever's using it, it's always important to acknowledge and reward. So we want to encourage people to continue and motivate inside of there. But basically, we just want to get everybody excited and interested in the garden, whether they're in the school or in the community, because also we need our community connections outside the school, because our school only goes at a certain time of the year, right? And it's sort of the least amount of gardening time if we're talking about a garden. So we're starting in September, which is harvest time, and then we're finishing in June. So for the spring season, we can get the plants started, we can get the plants in the ground, we can get the garden happening, but we need something to happen between June and September, or when we all come back in September, we have nothing, right? So the different ways that we work with this is to connect with outside community organizations. And this is part of our making connections with the community. So we bring in community groups, say women's organizations or retirement centers, day camps, summer day camps. We try to find other people that can use the garden in their own way, ideally to increase our impact outside of there. So not only does that make sure the garden is cared for the summer months, it can stay alive, it can keep going. It again expands our community and expands our impact and expands the value of the garden outside the school. Again, our bigger buy-in means longer life inside of there. We have some great connections on the west side with there was that one picture there with the triple high five, which is a there we go. That is a collaboration with Cité Verte or Verte Cité. Now I can't remember which way that goes, but this is a group that works under the Eco Quartier there, and we connected with them. And so they maintain our garden for the summer, and they work directly with the local food bank, and the food goes there. So we have garden maintenance. We have people who are eating and taking in the vegetables where it's helping somebody beyond ourselves. So it expands that impact and expands the value of the garden beyond just something that sits inside of a schoolyard. Again, there's all kinds of reasons we need community organizations outside for funding, for materials, for again, the greater impact, and also joint projects. Sometimes we'll do projects with other schools or other school boards or different levels of schools. So bringing in a high school to work with a junior school and expanding that learning, creating mentorships, and then again, expanding that community inside of there. So in terms of our community levels, what we're going to do here, I'm just going to break you down some of our examples, and then Melina's going to introduce our activities. So we really want this to be a hands-on something that you're pulling out of here, so that you can look at your own project. Its values, everyone's at a different sort of level in their project, but this is a valuable exercise to do at any time to sort of reassess your goals, reassess your project and your community partners, your relationships and partnerships that can go inside of there. And then after that, what we'd really like to do is bring in all of you to share the knowledge again, so that we can talk to each other. You can ask us questions. we can have kind of a dialogue around this. Again, this is important in building our community. So if you see in the circle diagram that we had here, there you go. So I'm sure we're all aware of this. And a lot of times our projects sit in that first circle. Can you see my pointer? I don't know. No. So a lot of times the projects sit in that first circle, right. They're not moving. The project is there, and the smaller our circle is, basically, the shorter the life of our project is, or the shorter the potential is, I guess we can say. So outside of our project and the coordinators and whoever's running that, then we're looking at the next level being school level. So within the school, that can be all the levels. It's important to remember the students inside of there, the educators and teachers, administration of the school and daycare administration as well. Special educators that come in. Sometimes in our schools, we have different animators that come in to do different things, spiritual animators, but also CCWs, childcare workers, and behavioral technicians that are working with different children with different needs that can all sort of take part in this garden or have some sort of buy-in or stewardship around it. Our custodians are really important to involve in the projects at some level, whether it is waste management or a garden project or a greening project. And then the parents, of course, also bring in the extended maintenance. We'll have for some schools, what we do is have different volunteer weeks. So each family will sign up for a week in the summer, and they'll come for that week and they'll help garden. They'll also share. They'll take home what's available that week, but if there's a lot of something in the garden that week, they'll share it with other parents on the list, and it brings it around like that. And this is a nice way to get the parents and outside community involved with the school itself. Because something that often happens that I see in the English school board, at least, were these little islands inside the city around, and the kids that go there aren't even necessarily from that community. So they're sort of isolated from the community as a whole. So this is where we find it's important in our next section there, where we see school board and community partnerships, to reach out beyond that for community organizations. This year we have a lot of different greening projects. This is something we've really embraced in the last year or so. So we work with organizations like Ville en Vert, for example, to do schoolyard greening projects. And they're connected then with other community organizations in those areas. So we can bring them in on a project and expand it well beyond the walls of our school. Other community partnerships, again, would be, like I mentioned before, the social organizations or community groups, special interest groups, those sorts of groups. Who did I miss inside of there? Also, we like to make partnerships with specific suppliers of something when there's a really high quality product, say compost is my favorite product in there. And so instead of always searching, I'm always looking for some way we can find a partnership with a compost producer, however that is. This is still something I'm working on, but I'm just giving you an example. Because the other part of these relationships and partnerships is they need to be as mutually beneficial as possible. So sometimes it is an outside partnership that is feeding you, and maybe it's not such a relationship inside of there. But whenever we can take it to that next level and make it a mutually beneficial relationship, I think that solidifies the connection inside of there. And again, the overall contribution to the project. And then beyond that, into the city, that can be city governance levels with different things inside of there, or in Montreal here, who we often work with is like the eco-quartiers, who work under the city, but are specifically for greening. And a lot of these community groups and organizations, they can work as a catalyst to connect you with other groups and organizations. So it's like, what do I want to say there? I've lost my word for that, but they can be like your point here that can connect you to all these other pop outside. If you can see my hands and take that visual, and you'll know what I'm saying. So these are really beneficial to all of our projects. Again, for things like funding, but also for implementation assistance or equipment. because we don't have access, we don't have a machine. Say the school project is putting trees in, a greening project in the asphalt. We don't necessarily have the machinery we need to dig into the asphalt. But working with these other community organizations, they can connect us with what we need, or they've got it, or they can give you another level inside of there. So it's important to go far with you'll see when you have your brainstorming thing soon, Melina will introduce it, but it's important to go far with your potential connections from small to big and beyond. When we're reaching out to as many people as possible, or whoever we think can help or contribute or help move something forward, to be open to all of the possibilities in there. And sometimes that's like just searching on Google and finding who's in the area that works in this area or this corner, or who's in the country that's doing this. And sometimes when that comes out of when you're looking for funding or educational opportunities, those sorts of relationships and connections we can make, we need to go big and beyond, and then also small and beyond. But what I'm trying to say here is to cast our net wide so that we can have some no's in there, and we can filter down to find the people and the groups and the organizations that are most relevant to what we're doing and can give us the most push and success inside of there.
And another thing too, Shannon, just to add, it's not only like sometimes our partnerships or the people that we work with are not there for the entirety of the project, right? Like if you're working with a schoolyard garden, hopefully that garden is going to be there for years and years and years. Maybe that community partnership is not going to last, 15 years, 20 years. Maybe it's only for a year or 2 years. That's still a successful partnership to be made. Because you've reaped the benefits of that 1 year, 6 months, whatever the time period is, and also, like, as we know, especially if you're working with like NGOs or community partnerships, depending on how much funding they have every year, you might not have access to the same funding or the same type of materials depending on what's happening in the world. So I think that's also important to acknowledge as well. So a successful partnership is however long it is successful for. It doesn't, you don't have to bank on it being like, okay, well, it only worked for a year, so it's a failure. No, that is a success within itself, right?
Right. And that's why within that smallest, not the smallest, your second circle of school parents, teachers, where our committee lies, that's why the committee can exist over the long term, even though all the members inside might disappear and change over time. Right. That's why it's important to have that something in there. And again, the relationships. When you have relationships within that committee, you're sort of ensuring longevity in some sense. Again, very few people stay at the same school for 20 years, but it can happen.
Yeah.
But we want almost the framework for how your committee can work and your relationships can happen so that it can carry through, even though the specific relationships inside of it will change as it goes along. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and that's why generational learning is so important and kind of key to what we do, making sure that, like, if I have a group of grade 6s, I make sure at some point throughout the year they're working with kindergartens or grade 1 so that they can have some sort of, the younger children can have some sort of buy-in into the garden. So, some schools, the children get excited to become Green Club when they're in grade 4, 5, and 6. And that's part of it as well, is that kind of intergenerational learning. And that's why sometimes we also bring in senior homes or recreational programming for seniors, is to also have that learning so our children can learn from them as well. Okay, so do you want to go into our little, our first activity?
Yeah, I would, thank you.
Okay, so here's how this is gonna work. I'm going to send you guys a link to an online survey that I created. And then I'm also going to share the screen with you with the questions that are just posted, so that if for some reason the link doesn't work, you can refer to the what's it called, the Word document. So basically, before I send you the link, I'm just gonna go over Here's the link in here. Blah, blah, blah. Hopefully that works for everybody. And then if not, I'm going to go over the questions in one moment. Here we go. Can everybody see my worksheet? Yes? Can you see my worksheet, Shannon?
I can see your worksheet,
Okay,
but
cool.
it says that I have to sign. Hi, Melina, just to say, it says I have to sign into Microsoft to open up that link you sent me.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
I don't have a Microsoft account.
Yeah, you know what? Forget if you have to sign into Microsoft and it's really complicated, then don't worry about the link that I sent, and you can just do this on a Word document on your computer or pen and paper, however you want. So whatever method works for you, because the questions are the same on either or. So basically the idea for this is like, it's actually, we're going to like turn off our cameras and our mics for about 10 minutes. And I want you guys to answer these questions about a project that you've been thinking about, or a goal that you've been thinking about within your school or wherever you're working that you would really like to do. And sometimes what happens when we have our projects, and again, it could be a small scale or a large scale project, and it doesn't have to specifically be a community garden. It can be a composting project or a waste audit or a hydroponic, if you want to start a hydroponic garden, or a green wall, whatever project that you've wanted to kind of start, think of it and then answer kind of these questions. And it can be in point form, however you want to answer them. And it's just really like a kind of like a personal brainstorming exercise just to get our kind of ideas flowing. And what we're going to do after our 10-minute mark is we're going to come back, and then whoever would like to share their project idea, not everyone has to, maybe we'll pick, you know, a few people to do it. We'll go over it with you and then give you our feedback and talk about it. Does that sound, everybody understand? Oh, someone's raising their hand. Yes.
I always have a question.
Yeah, of course.
Melina, would you suggest me to go on with, like, I want to continue the community garden, but I also would like to work on eventually a compost project. So would you recommend me to answer this on a future project, or
yeah, it's a good question.
Project that I want to improve?
Yeah, so I think,
how can I make the most out of it?
Yeah, so our goal is like, the goal for this is to pick the project that's like the most tangible. So the one, because at the end, we're trying to find maybe 3 action items that you can pull from what you've created that you can actually go back and implement this year. So maybe stick with the...
Definitely my garden.
Yeah, exactly.
It can only be better.
Although a composting program is great, and hopefully
yeah.
we get there.
Yeah, we'll get there.
It can be your choice, because it depends if you've already got this sort of laid out for your garden project, and this is a future project that you want to envision. I think this works well for a future project you want to envision. So it can start your brain thinking. And also that might be a good place to start, because when we have the discussion after, it might be difficult, some of these to answer for you for your future project, but these are
already done. The garden is just, we're looking for improvement, while the compost is like, we need to start from scratch. So I okay, thank you.
Yeah. Whatever's going to be most helpful for you. If you're starting from scratch with the compost, we can answer some questions that might come for you while you're working.
It'll be more beneficial. Okay, great. Thanks. Thank you, ladies.
Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to first ask if there's anybody who would like to, you know, talk about the project that they have in mind, and we can kind of go through it together. And you can just raise your hand if that's something that you want to do. And then from there, we'll just go into more general questions of discussion. And then right at the end, we would like everybody to, and we only have 20 minutes, so we got to make this quick, but like if anyone has any resources that they think that would be super helpful for everybody, please share in the chat. Okay, so Mark Reynolds, I'm going to give you, I'm going to raise you can go first. Mark, hello.
Hello.
Hey, Mark. Okay, so what goal or what project do you have in mind that you would like to accomplish this year or in the near future?
It's something that we have started, so I am very hopeful to get some feedback from folks. We are hoping to create a First Nations garden on our campus. The idea being that we would have kind of a demonstration garden of pre-colonial plant species as well as First Nation growing practices, and perhaps included in the gardens or nearby to have an outdoor meeting space for storytelling, classes to use, and kind of cross-cultural conversations.
Okay, cool. And do you know how, so do you know if there's any challenges or obstacles that you're facing immediately to make that happen?
Yes, I have a handful of contacts in Ganawagi, but I'm not too sure about how to find the correct people from First Nation backgrounds to help us design this, create this. Like, I really don't want it to be myself who designs and plans this. Like, I really want it to be we find our Indigenous members who are interested in this, and we can pay them and empower them to do it alongside us as well. So that's really one obstacle for now.
Yeah, I'm glad you just mentioned something that I was going to mention. I think that it's very important to make sure that when we are creating our budget for projects like this, that we reserve the budget, like a section of the budget, in order to pay for people's knowledge to make this happen. I did the same thing, or been trying to do the same thing in terms of teaching my students about First Nations cuisine and hiring a catering company to do that and make sure that I have that budget set aside, because that's very important. So that's a goal, or sorry, that's a challenge. I don't know if Shannon, if you have any intel, but that's a challenge that is to find the person with that ancestral knowledge, or that knowledge, to make sure that they're included into the project. It's very important. I don't know. I don't personally have any connections, Shannon. I don't know if you do, in terms of making that happen, but
glad that Catherine is already gone, but I think perhaps she might be a great source for you to start with.
Yes.
Right? Just based on how she outlined the projects that she is already going through right now, and the connections she's making. So I'm pretty sure maybe one of you ladies from Learn can confirm this, but usually Ben provides us with contact information, or perhaps you can contact her, you can send a contact through Learn Quebec that they can pass to her, because I think she might be a good place to start. Basically, all her projects that she outlined at the beginning were what you're looking for, right? So, and this is another exciting thing about having these sorts of meetings, is that we all come here with different knowledge and different backgrounds and different interests and different needs. And it's amazing how when we all come together like this, those things sort of fit together, right? We find someone or something that we're looking for. So that's my best advice there. Start right where we are and see if you can connect beyond.
Super.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Cool. Did anyone have another project they would like to just air out? Maybe other people have solutions, or not that I really solved any of your problems, Mark, to be honest, but it's just good to have it open. All right. Oops, sorry. I missed the hand raise. Let me see if I can figure this out here.
It's Emily.
Emily, okay. You can unmute yourself, right? Or do I have to do that?
It's me again.
Okay, tell us. Go ahead.
No, I'm going to share to everyone, because we spoke while people were working, I guess. So I want to work on a compost project. I know there's a lot of people that are doing it already. And the city of Thetford Mines offers the service to all the citizens, but it's not in the institutions yet. So I believe it's not that complicated. And especially at our school, the Eco Club, we created the Trashless Tuesdays based on Jane and all the teachers in the Valcartier. Michelle, we were always looking at your Facebook, by the way, guys. Awesome job. So we're stealing a lot of your good ideas in Valcartier. And anyway, the Trashless Tuesday is a moment where we hide every recycling, every garbage. The only thing we have is compost bin. Et c'était moi puis ma collègue Jessica. On apportait les bins et on les ramenait parce que some teachers were very not comfortable with that. Fait que c'était comme very heavy. Fait que ça, c'était un big problem. Mais si on pouvait, if we could have a compost program, on a vraiment un bel équipement. Ce serait plus au niveau de l'équipement, I believe, and about how to contact and approach the city without to make sure that we keep a good relationship with the city and so on. So it's more like a material issue, because we have lots of ideas and there's a lot of things out there, but it would reinforce, it would complement, if I can say, our Trashless Tuesday program, which we stopped this year. I don't know about you guys, but we stopped it because of the pandemic. We felt like the families had a lot to take care of, and it was not a good idea to, and for us teachers as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, I know Shannon, I don't know if you want to speak to a little bit about the student-led or school-led composting programs that you've been doing, and maybe that, we got 15 minutes ago, maybe share some resources that way, or some of the challenges that you've experienced working with the city, in the nice way to say it.
This is, well, and
polite.
Which city are you in again, Amelie?
Thetford Mines.
Okay, so I don't know how it works there. We're in Montreal, but
it's like a 50,000 population. It's not a big city.
For composting projects, partners and relationships inside the school are really important, because the main challenges I find with composting projects are exactly what you just stated, getting people to be involved inside of it, right? Because the concierge have their own contracts that are sometimes very specific and very static.
And everyone thinks it stinks and it's disgusting,
and they have different reasons for not wanting to come, and not
that's their right. I mean, everyone has a lot on their plate, but
yeah.
So the most successful way I've had to make these projects run is to make it school wide, so have it to be student run as much as possible. And I'm working in elementary schools, so this is younger students, but where I've had success in elementary schools is having sort of the grade 6s act as leaders, and then they can work with younger grades below them in terms of pickup. Another successful composting school we had in Saint Michel, each class sort of took responsibility for their own classroom bins. That then went out into a hallway bin, and then another group of students specifically for that. And there we had sort of the assistance of the concierge, but that's not true everywhere. They would take those ones were lined the next size in the hallway, and that would go out to the outside bin. So the important part there is, another main challenge is connecting with the city to make sure they'll actually pick it up. Some arrondissements are not picking up for institutions yet. Most of them are supposed to pick up, I believe, by 2022, at least in Montreal. All these schools and institutions are supposed to be in the city composting project. For that, it can be difficult to get that to happen. In the meantime, there are also private pickups you can work with. And sometimes,
yeah, but I know that. But I mean, Jess and I are tired of having our Toyotas full of everyone's little small bins that we bring. C'était vraiment archaic, là. It was not a good system.
A company that would come to the
school, right. Okay, like a private company. Right.
Yes, and take it with them.
Okay.
And they'll make compost.
So we can bypass the city?
Yes. I don't know about in your area, but here we have that available. There's a bunch of different companies that will actually do private pickup.
Can I just
do is try to find a contact within the city to see if you can arrange compost, or with some of your neighbors. What we've also done at some schools where they won't pick up from the city is we make a deal with a neighbor. Maybe grandma lives across the street, and we can put it out in front of their house, and they will pick it up like that.
Oh, no, it's kind of remote.
Yeah.
So you'd have to go directly with the city or with a private pickup company. Great.
And can I just take 30 minutes of your time just to share an experience, an anecdote? In my class, I'm teaching K5, and I'm sure if the teachers here knows that there's all les petits yup, all the containers that goes in the recycling bin or in the garbage. Unfortunately, I teach my kids to classify that, but we're working on a music project team, and toutes les petits trucs là, les containers de yup là, we're going to transform it into genre maracas and so on. So if you have that in your classroom, it's interesting. And also the kids, when you collect them, the kids see the amount that goes to the recycling. And if you're interested, with Michelle, we've done that project. I need to do a mini Padlet on that, but every year in grade 3, and when I was teaching grade 3, we would go around May, like for April, for the Earth Day and so on, we will work on a team of like how to save the planet and so on. And in April, May, we would go directly to the Récupération Frontenac. It's the city's place where they recycle everything, and the kids would see, and we would have a visit. Et aussi à Tête-Fin-Mines, on a un endroit où ils vont transformer les eaux usées en fait, ils transforment l'urine puis en tout cas les déchets, ils transforment des déchets non désirables là, en genre d'engrais to refill et pour rendre nous on a des mine pits, c'est pas très joli. Puis on est en train de reverdir les mine pits dans la région. C'est très, très spécifique à notre région, à nous. Tout le monde dit, Tête-Fin-Mines, c'est les grosses mines. Donc là, il y a vraiment une usine qui transforme les déchets en genre de compost, puis qu'on peut reverdir C'est vraiment intéressant. En tout cas, je voulais juste vous dire que c'est quelque chose qui se fait en partenariat avec les écoles. Là. Nous, à l'école à Tête-Fin-Mines, on fait ça à chaque année avec les 3e années.
And that's a great point that
visiter un centre de tri local, c'est vraiment intéressant et pédagogique. C'est juste ça que je voulais dire.
Am I muted? No. Okay. Okay, so we have 10 minutes. I would like to do maybe one more person that has something that they would like to work out with everybody, if there is that person. And please continue to put the resources in the chat. I have to say, some people have amazing resources for Mark, so maybe we weren't as helpful, but I've seen go to the botanical gardens. That's been a great resource, and they have their own, apparently they have their own designer for, anyway, so people have been really helpful in the chat. I just posted something called From Nutrients for Life. I don't know if many people have heard of this, but it's, I think it's national or international because there's an American version of it. Basically what we did is they actually sent us a box filled with different activities about soil health. So all you have to do is pay for the postage, and then you have I think there was about at least 20 different activities that you can run. And that's all for free except paying for the shipment of the box. So I put that nutrientsforlife.ca in there. You can go to that. So does anyone else have a project we want to outline really quickly with our 9 minutes left? If not, it's okay. We can continue to our next thing. Okay. So also, if you guys want, please send us these things because we would love to, and we would like to send it to everybody just to show how everyone's minds are working in terms of what their projects are. And we also, I'm going to share our last little resource, which you guys seen already. It's like, this is how you know that I work in gardens, is my technical prowess is not amazing. I'm like, where did everything go? I'm like, I'm hands-on person. All right, found it, guys. We're good. Okay. So this is a really, yeah, here we go. So this is like a really basic version, actually, from the Jane Goodall Orchid Foundation. They're talking about the community mapping. That's way more in depth that you do with your students, but it's basically the version that we've done here, but a little bit more in depth. So please use that as a resource as this. But I'm going to send you both these things because I think these bubbles are also important. Just to, when you're mapping out your project, thinking of all of the different ways that you can have help with it, because we can't do all of these things alone. A garden cannot be done by one person. It needs to be a community of people, like we were saying before. Oops, I have. Okay. And that's it. So I don't know, Shannon, do you have anything else to add to what we were talking about? Or are we good?
I think we're okay. I just want to invite everybody, because we are going to run out of time really quick here, and I feel like we have a lot we can talk about, and everybody's got some really interesting stuff going on, and I would also love to learn more. So if you have any specific questions, I'm going to put our contact information in the chat so everybody can just reach out to us that way, if and when you want, or for any specific project or any questions or anything else you want to contribute. Also, yes, please add anything to the chat in terms of questions you have now or resources to share, because I do like what's going on in there.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
I'm learning a lot for myself just reading it. Okay. Yeah, and one last thing that I would like to say, or one of the last things I'd like to say, I think sometimes when we have these kind of conferences, we're kind of like preaching to the choir. Like everybody here, when we went through the introduction, I was like, so everybody here does amazing work and everybody here does similar work to what we do. So I think another element, and when we're talking about our circles, is even though there might be people in your life or people in your school or in your community that are not necessarily have a green thumb, or not immediately you think, oh, they would be great for an environmental education project. It's less about that and more about people who are willing to help. Like I've experienced some of the women who work in our daycares who refused to even go onto the grass because they didn't want to touch the grass. And now they're in the garden getting their hands dirty and everything. And it just took this kind of persistence on my end, and then also just having an openness to be like, okay, I'm not an expert, we're all gonna learn here, and we're all gonna come into the garden and work. So that's another thing too, is just like maybe think about the people in your life or in your school or in your community that are not necessarily the most, have a green thumb, but have eagerness and are happy to help, because those are the people that are also going to be beneficial to your project as well.